The Bible accurately predicted everything. You've heard it. History, kingdoms, Jesus, even the end of the world. All supposedly written down thousands of years ago, like some divine spoiler alert. And I get it. On the surface, that sounds powerful. If a book can call the shots before they happen, that book must be from God, right? That's why preachers hold prophecy up like their ace card. It feels airtight, undeniable, untouchable. But here's the problem. The moment you scratch beneath that surface, the shine fades fast. Those so called prophecies aren't what they claim to be. They're vague, they're written after the fact, they're ripped out of context, and sometimes they just flat out fail. So, if prophecy is supposed to be the Bible's proof, then prophecy is also the Bible's undoing. And in this conversation, we're going to pull back the curtain and show exactly why. Because what apologists call fulfilled prophecy almost always falls into one of four categories. Let's jump into the first one. Category number one, written after the fact. Scholars even have a phrase for this, vaticinium ex eventu, prophecy written after the event. In other words, history dressed up as prediction. Take Daniel. Christians love to say Daniel laid out the rise and fall of empires with surgical precision. But here's the truth, those prophecies were written in the second century BCE during the reign of Antiochus IV. That's why the details are sharp up until his time, and then suddenly they get fuzzy, vague, or flat out wrong after. Daniel isn't predicting the future, he's journaling the present and calling it foresight. Or look at the so called prophecies of Jesus' birth in Matthew. They're not predictions at all, they're retrofits. The gospel writer is combing through Hebrew scriptures, grabbing poetry, political lament, and national stories and stapling them onto Jesus. See, it was predicted. But those texts weren't about a coming Messiah, they were about their own moment in history. This isn't prophecy, this is creative editing. This is like me announcing that I predict that yesterday the sun came up. Am I impressive or just late to the party? Let's get into category number two, vague or symbolic language. Most so called prophecies in the Bible aren't predictions at all. They're vague poetry dressed up as foresight. They're written so broadly that you can make them fit anything if you try hard enough. Take Jesus' famous lines in Matthew 24, wars and rumors of wars. Okay, pause. Find me one century, just one, in all of human history where that wasn't true. Congratulations, that's not prophecy. That's just human nature with the side of CNN. Or how about nation shall rise against nation? Wow, deep, Pulitzer level stuff. That's every era, every empire. Every empire's downfall, rinse, and repeat. If I said tomorrow there will be conflict somewhere in the world, I wouldn't be a prophet. I'd just be alive and paying attention. Seriously, did anyone stop to ask the obvious question? Has there ever been a time in human civilization without wars and rumors of wars? No, never. So to believe it's only in our time is just self centered delusion. It's spiritual narcissism. Carly Simon was right. You're so vain, I bet you think this war is about you. And the Bible isn't unique in this trick. Nostradamus did the exact same thing. Broad symbolic language that believers can retrofit into anything they want. Call it prophecy, call it poetry, call it clickbait before clickbait. Just don't call it divine foresight. Let's get into category three, conditional prophecies. Here's the part apologists don't like to admit. A lot of biblical prophecies aren't predictions at all, they're conditions. Look at Jeremiah 18, 7 through 10. God basically says, if a nation does evil, I'll destroy it. But if they repent, I'll change my mind. If they're doing good and turn evil, I'll revoke the blessing. That's not prophecy. That's not foresight. That's bargaining. It's less crystal ball and more choose your own adventure. Flip to page 37 if Israel behaves, flip to page 89 if they don't. Either way, the prophet gets to say, see, I told you so. And notice the brilliance of this setup. It's unfalsifiable. If the prophecy comes true, praise God. If it doesn't, well, the people must have repented or disobeyed or changed course. The prophet always wins. Conditional prophecy isn't evidence of divine knowledge. It's the oldest religious hustle. Promise both outcomes and claim the hit later. Now let's get into the fourth category, flat out failures. If the Bible is supposed to be batting 1,000, then what do we do with the pitches it missed completely? Because the Bible doesn't just traffic in vague poetry or conditional choose your own adventure warnings. It makes clear predictions, and some of them flat out flopped. Take Isaiah chapter 17, where it says Damascus will be a ruinous heap, never inhabited again. The problem, Damascus is still one of the oldest continually inhabited cities on the planet. People are literally eating falafel and paying rent there as we speak. Or Ezekiel 26, Tyre will be destroyed, never rebuilt. Wrong again. Tyre was rebuilt. Tyre still exists. You can fly there today, snap a selfie, and tag it, hashtag not destroyed. Yikes. Or how about Ezekiel 29 through 30? Egypt will be conquered, desolate, and never rise again. Tell that to the 110 million people living in Egypt right now. The pyramids are still standing, Cairo is still thriving, and Egypt is still a populous nation. I mean, to be quite honest, there seems to be nothing desolate about Egypt today. Awkward. And let's not forget Jesus himself in Matthew 24. He says, this generation will not pass away until all these things happen. Spoiler, that generation passed away. The temple fell, but the end of the world, still waiting. The world kept spinning. Now here's the kicker. By the Bible's own standard, Deuteronomy chapter 18, verse 22, if even one prophecy fails, the prophet is false. Not mostly true, not close enough, false, which means the biblical record isn't proof of its reliability. It's evidence of failure. Prophecies that flop don't make it into the church highlight reel, but they're there, and they're fatal to the claim of a perfect record, because a prophet who bats .500 isn't a prophet at all. That's not prophecy. That's guesswork with a choir behind it. Now that we've dealt with the categories, let's highlight a few more common issues when it comes to the Bible's prophecy claims. Many times, they're misquoted, misapplied, and ripped out of context. You've heard the claim, Jesus fulfilled 300 prophecies. It sounds impressive until you actually look at them, because here's the truth. A huge chunk of those so-called prophecies weren't prophecies at all. They were stories, poems, laments, or national history later ripped out of context and duct taped to Jesus. Take Hosea 11, chapter 1. It says, out of Egypt I called my son. In context, it's about Israel coming out of the Exodus, period. Not a sneak preview of a baby Jesus taking a road trip. Or Isaiah chapter 7, verse 14, the famous virgin birth, except the Hebrew word is Alma, which means young woman, not virgin. And the prophecy was assigned to King Ahaz in his own time, 700 years before Jesus. Matthew didn't discover a prophecy. He, or whoever did it in his name, rebranded a political sign into a messianic miracle. And then there's Psalm 22. They pierced my hands and feet. Except the original text is better translated like a lion at my hands and feet. It's a poetic cry of suffering, not a prediction of crucifixion. The image got massaged into prophecy because the later community wanted it to fit. This isn't prophecy. This is proof texting, grabbing random lines and stapling them onto later events. This isn't fulfillment. It's creative editing, retrofitting stories after the fact. So when someone says Jesus fulfilled hundreds of prophecies, what they really mean is the gospel writers knew their scriptures well enough to stitch together a new story, and that's not divine foresight. That's literary fan fiction. You're welcome. So now that we understand the fan fiction component, we can talk about self-fulfilling prophecy. Sometimes a prophecy comes true not because the future was predicted, but because believers made it happen. Take Zechariah 9:9. It says, see, your king comes to you riding on a donkey. The Gospels say Jesus rode into Jerusalem on a donkey, and Christians shout, prophecy fulfilled. No, that's not prophecy. That's theater. Jesus, or at least the storytellers, knew the verse and staged the scene. It's like reading a script and then acting it out on the stage, or the destruction of the temple in 70 CE. The Gospels were written after that event, and suddenly Jesus is portrayed as predicting it. That's not foresight, that's retrofit. History dressed up as foretold to give Jesus more credibility. This isn't supernatural, this is the oldest trick in the book. Call your shot, then make sure you hit it. It's like me prophesying right now that I'm about to drop my mic and then doing it. I'm not going to do that. So, congratulations, prophecy fulfilled. And we can't talk about this subject without highlighting the code reading trick. A lot of biblical prophecy works the same way psychics and fortune tellers work. It's not divine foreknowledge, it's a parlor trick. Here's the formula: keep it vague, appeal to universal human experiences, let the audience do the work of connecting the dots, highlight the hits, ignore the misses. That's not prophecy, that's the Barnum effect. Broad statements dressed up as personal destiny. You will face trials, but you will also have blessings. Well, thank you, Prophet Obvious. That applies to literally every human life ever lived. And it's the same trick psychics use. I see someone with the letter J. Does that mean something to you? My first question is, how do you see somebody with the letter J? Are they holding the letter J up? Please explain that to me. But the listener fills in the blanks, and suddenly it feels personal, powerful, even supernatural. But let's be clear, it's not magic, it's manipulation. When prophecy functions this way, it's less revelation from God and more Vegas slideshow, smoke, mirrors, and audience participation. So now let's highlight the psychological and sociological implications. Here's the question: if prophecy is this flimsy, vague, recycled, failed, self fulfilled, why does it still hold power? The answer isn't accuracy, it's authority. Psychologically, people crave certainty. In a world that feels chaotic and unpredictable, prophecy functions like a roadmap. It gives the illusion of control, a sense that someone has already charted the future. That comfort gets weaponized as proof. See, God said it, and it happened. You can trust him. But that's not history, that's psychological anchoring. It feels true because people need it to feel true. Now, sociologically, prophecy is leverage. Leaders hold it up as evidence of divine authority. The Bible predicted this: trust us, follow us, don't question us. Prophecy becomes a control mechanism, a way to keep people in line, secure in the idea that they're on the right side of a scripted destiny. But in reality, biblical prophecy isn't a miraculous prediction machine. It's a mix of retroactive storytelling, poetic lament, failed guesses, and vague language that later generations reinterpret to fit whatever they're in. It's not divine foresight, it's human spin, recycled, rebranded, and repackaged as revelation. So the verdict? Prophecy in the Bible is not evidence of divine foresight. It's a patchwork. Retroactive writing dressed up as prediction, vague poetry that can mean anything, conditional warnings that cover every outcome, failed promises that history left behind, and gospel writers shaping their stories to fit old verses. If prophecy is your proof, then you don't have proof. You have spin. And here's the kicker: by the Bible's own standard, again, Deuteronomy 18:22, if even one prophecy fails, the prophet is false. Not mostly right, not close enough, false, which means that by its own rules, the Bible disqualifies itself as a reliable prophetic witness. The Bible is not a flawless book of love letters and crystal ball predictions. It's a collection of human voices trying to make sense of their world, struggling with suffering, reaching for meaning. Sometimes it's poetry, sometimes it's political propaganda, sometimes it's promises that history exposed as wishful thinking. And maybe that's the point where we flip the metaphor. Maybe the prophecy worth trusting isn't buried in ancient texts. Maybe the real prophecy is what we dare to write into tomorrow. Because the future isn't secured by someone else's predictions. It's secured by our choices, by our courage, by our willingness to build communities of justice, compassion, and truth. The Bible's prophecies are exhausted, but our prophecy, the one we embody with our actions, is still being written. And that story will outlast every failed prediction. So when people say the Bible has successfully predicted everything, the answer is simple: no, it hasn't. What it has done is recycled history, retrofit events, fail openly, and hide behind vagueness. That's not prophecy. That's propaganda with poetic flair. And if you think that counts as the voice of God, you don't need a prophet. You need a better memory, a history book, and maybe a subscription to the Weather Channel. Thank you for joining me in today's conversation. I hope I said something that brought some value to your life. And if I did, please share it in the comments. And speaking of sharing, make sure you share this video with somebody that you think it'll bring some value to them. Also, like it, and if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to the channel. If you didn't know, one of my passions is community, and that's why I'm building Bridge City Global. And as of now, it's starting to grow. And I don't mean just online. We have an interest group in SoCal that is quickly growing into what may be our first pilot campus for Bridge City. How exciting is that? And I'm actually going to be traveling there from October the 23rd through the 27th to hang out with our team, meet some of our new community members, and cast vision. If you're in the area, I'd love to see you there. And if you're not in the area, consider flying in. I wouldn't be mad at it. As location details are solidified, I'll keep you in the loop. If you're interested in being a part of building community, make sure to click the tap in link in the description below. You can also consider enrolling in BC 101, How We Change the World. It's our free course that introduces people to the mission, the message, and the methodology of Bridge City Global. There's nearly 100 students already in there, so go ahead and jump in. The more the merrier. And last but not least, if you want to see more of this content, if you want to support this community, if you want to make sure that we continue to gain momentum, continue to grow, then consider becoming a supporter of the channel, either through Patreon or the YouTube membership program, or just through Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, or even Window Shop. Your support doesn't just keep the lights on, it literally builds the foundation for this movement. Our community has grown as fast and far as it has because of our supporters. We would not be here without them. So consider joining that club. All right, that's all I have for you today. Until next time, keep rising.